Welcome back, boxing fans. Just home from a long weekend out in the mountains. And I tuned into this video. And of course, once I saw it, I was like, of course, this fucking clown is somehow making Xander Zaya's performance this weekend into a race one, right? Because, he's a white American Caucasian. But nonetheless, and that has to bring in Brian Norman to this. And is trying to fanboy Brian Norman's performance against Santillan and diminish and downplay Xander Zayas' performance. Let's put this in perspective. Both of these young fighters were both highly thought of prospects who've had some up and downs in their progression in their careers. Norman was, of course, put in to fight Santillan to try to put himself into a position to win that vacant WBO title. He did exactly what he should have done. He fought great, showed tons of heart, was the better fighter, got the win. But now this guy comes out and is acting like somehow Brian Norman beat this incredible, great, highly ranked 147-pound fighter in Santillan. A fighter he'd never even talked about in his career, or his channel, ever. Never would have mentioned this guy except to shit on him. But of course, now he's fanboying him, all to do what? Shine a light on Brian Norman and try to fanboy the black American fighter. Yet, then he goes out and criticizes Teixeira. Unlike Santillan, Teixeira was a legitimate world champion. Santillan wasn't a world champion. He didn't win a world title. He was in line to win a vacant title, but he hasn't been a champion yet. He's not a champion, and it looks like he never will be a champion. Teixeira was a champion, right? So for Xander Zayas to step up at this point to take on him, it's just as impressive as Brian Norman stepping up to take on Santillan. Even though Santillan is a less proven fighter than Teixeira. His resume is not as good. He's never become a world champion in his career like Teixeira. So, to act like Brian Norman fought some great fighter and his victory was so much better, and somehow Xander Zayas' performance now is being diminished. And the question you have to ask yourself is, why diminish either one of these fighters? These are two young, up-and-coming, top-ranked fighters who are both being promoted and pushed by Top Rank. Both put in positions to further their career and potentially become world champions at their weight division. Obviously, Brian Norman is a little closer right now than Xander Zayas. But Xander Zayas is not far from potentially getting a world title fight, whether it be the WBO or some other sanctioning body. He's obviously right there as well, especially after beating Teixeira. But you ask yourself, why does a channel like this consistently need to make something like this racial? Because there's no racial component here. It's not as if Xander Zayas fans were shitting on Brian Norman. And the only people you can see shitting on someone are Brian Norman fans who are now shitting on Xander Zayas. So it's the complete reverse of the racism that this guy is trying to portray. It's the opposite. It's literally black boxing fans hating on non-black boxing fans and non-black boxers. And you don't need to do that. Brian Norman looks like he's a great addition to the 147 pounds. We want to see him take on the best fighters in this division and find out who really is the star. For Xander Zayas, I made multiple videos talking about him being a great addition to that high-level group of fighters currently at 154. Obviously, Xander Zayas' division is much deeper and much more dangerous, right? At 154, not only do you have the pound for pound top fighter in boxing, 1, 2, or 3, wherever you want to rate him, Bud Crawford, but you also have Errol Spence trying to bounce back. You have Tim Tszyu, Lubin, obviously Funduro, and Mendoza, Jesus Ramos, and many other really, really good fighters, Charles Conwell, right? Whereas at 147, right now, it seems as if there's obviously Boots Ennis, potentially Brian Norman, maybe Mario Barros, maybe Ostanionis, and then outside of that, there's not much more, right? So Brian Norman is going to have every opportunity to become a star. Top Rank is going to put him in position to win fights, to build up his platform, to become a bigger name in the sport of boxing. Just like they're trying to build up Xander Zayas. The one difference is Xander Zayas is obviously far more marketable, right? And this is the rub, because guys like this know Xander Zayas is more marketable, and this really bothers them because they would much rather act as if Brian Norman is more marketable, that he is the guy who will have the bigger fan base. He is the guy that potentially can become the pay-per-view star in the weight, and maybe he will. But on the outside looking in right now, the one fighter who obviously looks like he can cross over much quicker is Xander Zayas, with his Puerto Rican, New York fan base, right? Which we know historically have been